Batman Arkham Knight, Joker's Cremation, Pauli's Diner. Published on my website, accordionsprout.com, September 9th, 2023. Recorded September 10th, 2024. That wasn't intentional, I promise. I planned to do Batman and I did it. I recorded it tonight on the 10th, which is a day after technically, but I thought it was cool. Anyway, let's get to the essay. So it's 2015, and I had played Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, so I knew that the Joker was dead. Spoilers, by the way. But when I sat in the room with my ex-wife, her brother and sister, and her sister's childhood friend, I had not expected the character to greet me one more time as we booted up Arkham Knight on brand new PS4. The lights were off, leaving the only source of light the dimly colored television screen. The Joker rested on his back, smiling serenely, and as I waited, holding the controller in my hands, I braced myself for a cheap jump scare. But it didn't come. Frank Sinatra was singing Under My Skin in the background, a music selection that turned out to be a perfect example of how music can and should be employed narratively in games. At some point, we all began to wonder if the game was glitching, a reasonable assumption since it had just been released. The weight of the PS4 controller rested in my hands, and at some point I thought, screw it, and pressed one of the buttons. The chemical noise of air sucking up into combustion was heard, and fire began to appear beneath Joker. I did this a few more times, testing this ignition process and watching Joker's skin go from his pale white to a pungent pink. I interrupt briefly to note, I don't like that pungent pink. It sounds nice, and it's fun to read, but I don't like it. I should have done something else to communicate the fact that Joker's skin starts to boil. Anyway, finally, realizing what was actually happening, and that the opening of this game required me to set Joker's corpse on fire, I held the action button down and watched as fire filled the screen. This is the very first playable section of the game Arkham Knight, and what follows is just as surreal. On a side note, I forgot to check whether the flower in the lapel burns. You'd think after igniting Joker on fire well over 20 times I'd have noticed that by now. I'm given a minute or two of commentary by Commissioner Gordon, the eternally aging yet always middle-aged Commissioner of Gotham, voiced perfectly by Jonathan Banks. I'm told the Joker is dead, crime rates in the city of Gotham fall, and that everyone was waiting for the next big event. It happens on Halloween. I'm given first-hand control of a GCPD officer by the name of Owens who visits Pauli's Diner. He orders pancakes with bacon, asks the waitress not to tell his wife, and has a moment to himself before a customer walks over to ask him if he could speak with one of the patrons who's smoking in the corner booth. Once again, I'm given control of the officer, and I'm given limited mobility to explore the diner and overhear some conversations taking place. Most of these are innocuous and forgettable, so I head to the booth. I hear a patron cough before it all happens. The first 10 times I played the game, I missed that cough. I don't know how I did, but I did. I approach the hooded figure, who's staring at their phone absent-mindedly. A red backpack sits on the table. A faint orange miasma floats up from the bag. Officer Owen tells the man the restaurant is non-smoking. A demon with empty black orbs for eyes and festering sharp teeth spins around. Somewhere, a loud drum strikes. Officer Owens is thrown into the wall as the world turns orange and the tiles of the restaurant begin to peel away. When I'm given control of Officer Owens again, the world has turned into hell, and the customers of Pauli's Diner are all demons, punching and biting each other or slamming their heads into the floor. One of these demons spots me and moves to attack. It's here that I'm given a choice. I can either shoot the demon and defend myself, or I can let it take me. Either choice is only delaying the inevitable moment when I'm finally knocked unconscious. Another cutscene plays, setting up the rest of the story. Scarecrow's back, he has a new toxin, Gotham is evacuated, Two-Face and Penguin shoot a police officer, and Gordon lets us know that there's only one person who can save us. Zendaya. Oh, crud. Batman. Sorry, I meant Batman. Not Zendaya. She could probably save us too, honestly, because she's awesome, but it's Batman. From this point on, the player will play exclusively as Batman, at least during the main game if you don't include the Batmobile and a few moments where you control Robin, Nightwing, or Catwoman. And while there is a wealth of material to critically unpack and discuss about Arkham Knight, I thought, while I was writing my review of E1M1 of Doom, that this opening is interesting from a narrative and technical perspective. Both of the previous Arkham games began and concluded with controlling Batman, either through basic aspects of walking or low-level fighting mechanics. Apart from being great action games in and of themselves, the Arkham series has consistently scored well with critics and players who love the fighting system. Since the beginning of the franchise, the Arkham games have been about moving Batman's bodies in fantastic ways. You can glide around Gotham, you can crawl between vents, you can walk across tight ropes, you can flip through the air to punch criminals, sometimes even throwing them in slow motion, thus completing an obligatory Zack Snyder reference. While I was looking at some of the reviews for Arkham Knight, I found a great summary of how the fighting mechanic feels as a player. Writing for GameSpot.com, Kevin Van Ord notes of the game, "It might be hard to believe Batman isn't sending men to the morgue during Arkham Knight's melee battles, but the series' rhythmic hand-to-hand combat continues to set the bar high. Batman is a frightening, almost otherworldly creature as he tumbles and slides from one target to another, and his fists exhibit the raw power of any hammer or club. Playing Arkham Knight is about simulating another body. I'm experiencing a body that is trained, limber, and strong, everything that my actual 34-year-old body is not. I note, as a brief interruption here, my 35-year-old body is also none of those things. There's almost certainly an escapist fantasy whenever I play the game, but of course, there's the fact that it's also a game. Fights come with individual elements, depending on whether it's composed of just low-level grunts, beefy tanks, criminals carrying knives or swords, and whether enemies are holding guns or stun sticks. I note, as a brief interruption, I have a speech impediment, particularly with my S's. I've always had difficulty with them, so I apologize if that stun sticks completely hurts your ears. I try my best, but listen, not being able to pronounce S's is a pain. Anyway, strategy alone isn't what's fun about playing Batman's body, though. Punching an enemy begins a streak count, in which continual movement and attack will increase the power of each strike. Fights, depending on the player's skill, can reach up into the 40s and 50s, ensuring that Batman can quickly dispatch foes unless he breaks the rhythm by breaking an enemy's arm or leg if he's struck by one of these opponents. Watching that number rise, listening to the crushing and cracking sound effects of punches, and then seeing the screen become fuzzy as we get an actual visualizations of Batman's adrenaline levels as he's reaching higher and higher flows of combat is invigorating. And then the fight's over. The numbers drop, reality resumes, I move on to the next mission. Arkham Knight's narrative explores the end of a trilogy, as well as the end of the life of Batman. The game isn't even subtle about this, as Gordon notes after the cremation of Joker that, "This is how the Batman died." Just about every arc in the story seems to revolve back to the idea that Batman's time is coming to an end, and that after the events of Arkham Knight are finished, he will either be destroyed, killed, or simply have to end his mission. I know in reality, Batman will never be truly dead because, well, comics, dude. But this was the last game that Kevin Conroy voiced before his actual death, so there is a kind of finality to it. After writing that paragraph, I found out Conroy actually did some voiceover lines for Rocksteady's next game, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, but the emotional sentiment of the original argument still stands. I don't honestly like the character Batman that much for a host of reasons, but I love Arkham Knight as a game because of its fighting mechanic. Which brings me back to the beginning. Starting a game which has been pre-established as a well-regarded, if not one of the best fighting games, with two scenes where the player is denied the opportunity to play as Batman, isn't just a good choice. It's a great design and a great rhetorical tactic. The cremation and the attack on the diner are both scenes which demonstrate the frailty of the body and ultimately how ephemeral it is. They are well-crafted memento mori. No matter how strong or fit or capable something is, eventually it will break down and die. The fight, at some point will stop. Video games about fighting rarely involve such a narrative structure because their design system isn't conducive to this. Ryu and E. Honda aren't going to stop a fight to wax philosophic about the inevitability of death in Street Fighter 2. Likewise, when I'm fighting 20 dudes who are holding a firefighter hostage, I'm not thinking about the fact that Batman is going to die one day. I'm not even thinking about my own death. I'm just watching the numbers go up, enjoying the music, and just trying to exist in the moment. Arkham Knight is not a perfect game, but these opening sections are wonderful examples of how denying the player their expectation, even temporarily, can create a subtle impression that lingers. Burning Joker's body and shooting patrons in a diner aren't anywhere near as fun as reaching a 50x critical hit points combo in a fight involving at least 3 heavy brawlers. They aren't even fun. And that's the point. Arkham Knight is a video game that begins with death, ends with death, and fills the gap between with color, energy, and life. Arkham Knight mirrors the frailty and the beauty of existence, even in its most horrific moments, as we remember that, ultimately, all of this is going to end. Joshua Jammer Smith, 9th of September, 2023. Howdy, I'm Jammer. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. I tremendously appreciate it. Let's just go over the usual stuff. First off, thanks for listening. Seriously, you could have spent the last few minutes watching videos on TikTok, or heck, even this is YouTube. They've basically got TikToks on YouTube now. They call them Reels, but let's be real, it's TikTok. You could have been watching Reels, but instead you decided to listen to some dude talk about a game from 2015. And also, how is Batman Arkham Knight literally almost a decade old at the time of this recording? Like, just flip off with that. I can't even. I can feel my spine turning to dust. But whatever. The game is awesome, and it's worth playing, and obviously, you probably think so too because you're listening. Second, as always, please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual just stuff that every person on YouTube has to say because we're all trying to make it in our own way, but it does help because it lets me know people are interested in these, that they're actually listening. It's a nice little ego boost for me, given the fact I have criminally low self-esteem, but then it's also too, more people will get a chance to see it, and that'll give me an idea of what to explore, what to write about, what to record about, what have you. So please hit all the buttons, smash that like, follow me, whatever. Likewise, if you like what I'm doing and like the channel, I have a Patreon. It's www.patreon.com/jammerdraws, and there is only one donation, or one tier, and it is $1. That's it. I treat these videos like I do pretty much everything else that I make. I'm just some dude talking into a microphone, or I'm just some dude typing up words and throwing them onto the internet. If you like what I'm doing, throw me a buck. I will be immensely appreciative. And I note, as of this writing, I do actually have some patrons. One of them was a very lovely individual by the name of Lise Blanchard, and then the other one is somebody by the name of Nibblewerfer. I don't know what that name means, but I love it. So, Lise Blanchard and Nibblewerfer, thank you. I appreciate your bucks. Alright, now with all that boring stuff out of the way, let's talk about Batman Arkham Knight and why this game, 10 years later, is still great. And the fact that I managed to write at least a 1,000-word essay about a Batman game. Like I said, I don't even really like the character of Batman. You know, I'm honestly more of a Superman kind of guy. I know that makes me super basic, but I like Superman. I like him more. I wish he had better video games, but, you know, just what can you do? Still, I played all of the Arkham games because they rule. If you've never played any of the Arkham games, you can get them on, God, you can get them on the Nintendo Switch now. You can get them on the PlayStation. You can get them on PC, you can get them on that one console that whatever, I can't remember the name of the other one. But the point is, you can play those on just about anything now. Honestly, give it 10 years. Somebody's going to find a way to play this game on your phone. But the point is, these games still hold up, and it's entirely because they have an incredible design when it comes to atmospheres, but really more than anything else in terms of just the sheer physicality. On my website, accordionsprout.com, I have a series of essays I've done that I refer to as the joy of movement, where I just look at games where movement is really interesting and really enjoyable. And I haven't written anything about Batman at this point, or particularly about the Arkham Knight or Arkham Asylum or Arkham City. Any one of those games, the joy of playing the game is largely of just controlling Batman and moving him through the space. But it's really in Arkham Knight where that joy of motion just really kicked in and just became something great. So if you've never played the game, my elevator pitch to you is there really isn't another game that's as fun to move an avatar around as Arkham Knight. Except maybe Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom, which I just wrote an essay about the other day. That won't come out till 2025. But there's also a couple others in that series, and you know what? Now that this is the second longer form essay I've done, keep an eye out because I'll probably start recording those. But I really wanted to focus on, despite how much fun it is to control Batman's avatar and move him around, and driving the Batmobile in this game is fun. Like, when I think about this game that I've spent almost assuredly almost 200 hours playing at this point, I can say most of it was just driving the Batmobile around, blowing up tanks, and just performing riddles. It's a blast. And yet, the first thing I wanted to write about it was how the start of that game opens up with the death of Joker, and then a cop watching a group of people in a diner just beat the crap out of each other and try to kill each other. And again, you have the option to shoot the patrons or just not fire your gun before one of them takes you out. Either option, to me, is still really interesting because, again, it focuses on human vulnerability, it focuses on body vulnerability, and if you've ever played Arkham Knight, there is so much emphasis on this is the end for Batman, or you get the perception that we're coming to an end, and then there's a major narrative point that I don't want to spoil in this that is all about Batman's body and how central it is to the entire gameplay. And yet, the game starts off with so much death, and then it ends with so much death. It's just a beautiful rhetorical structure, and it's worth playing this game just to observe how well they pull this off. But I'm, at this point, kind of repeating myself. So, again, thank you so much for listening. I tremendously appreciate it, and hey, go play some video games.